Hello and welcome to the DVD Graveyard. Tonight we're going to be taking a look at Alien 3 from 1992, directed by David Fincher. And before I kind of get too far into this, I just want to say that, several years ago, whenever I really started to get into the Alien franchise, now I've always known about the first film and Aliens, the sequel. Those have always been around. I couldn't even tell you the first time I saw those, to be honest with you. But Alien 3 was one that I vividly remember watching for the first time when I got this quadrilogy box set that I have here, the DVD box set that I've still not upgraded to this day. I highly recommend it if you're an Alien fan and you just want to get something cheap and quick. Anyway, whenever I've got into the franchise, when I got this box set, I had seen Alien 3, but I was not super familiar with it, not as familiar with it as I was with, of course, the first two, like I said. But I just remember hearing a lot of complaints about it. Like, everybody used to shit on Alien 3 hardcore, and they might still. Like, I still don't really hear a lot of people, like, necessarily praising this movie. But from the first time I watched this movie, I remember sitting down with, when I got this quadrilogy box set, watching the film and being like, what is everybody's problem with this movie? Like, I thought it was great. I've always loved this movie from the first time, and of course I've had this for years now. I couldn't even tell you when I really got this box set. It was a long time ago. My mom got it for me, if that for Christmas, when I still lived at home, years and years ago. So like I said, from the first time I saw this, I thought it was great. Now I will get how everybody says it is kind of a downer compared to the previous film in the franchise. It kind of negates some things sort of kind of that happened in the ending of the previous film, which I get, and again I will discuss that in just a minute. But for the most part, I really enjoyed this movie. I did not really see anybody's, I didn't get anybody's complaint. I get that it's a much darker tone. It's a little bit more, I don't even really want to say depressing, but it's kind of a little bit more of a downer movie, which again is not really a problem for me. I think it fits well with kind of Sigourney Weaver's character arc that's kind of going on in this franchise. And honestly, if the franchise would have ended right here with Alien 3, I think it would have been a great way to top off the franchise. I think it would have been a great ending piece. But again, we'll get more into that here in just a minute. I'm not going to go too deeply on this. But before I get that, into the actual plot details, I just wanted to say that again that this one was directed by David Fincher, which much like the previous film in the franchise being done by James Cameron. Everyone knows James Cameron at this point, very big director, as well as Ridley Scott. But this one being done by David Fincher. Now, if you don't know who he is the man who did the film Seven, which is a great movie. I love Seven. It's very good. I love Seven. If you haven't seen it, go check that out for sure. Of course, he did Fight Club, which is a great movie that everybody knows about. Zodiac, which is an excellent film about the Zodiac killer. He did The Game with Michael Douglas. That was a really good movie. He did the film Panic Room with Jodie Foster. So he's done some really, really big time movies, to be honest with you. And I was kind of surprised whenever I actually looked into that and saw that he was kind of attached to this, or whenever, I guess I should say, I realized how much other stuff he was attached to besides just Alien 3 whenever I first kind of got into this movie. And before I kind of get into the actual review of this movie, I just want to say this too, that this movie has two different versions, much like all the films in this Alien quadrilogy set. Sorry, I'm stuttering a little bit. In this Alien quadrilogy set, pretty much every film, I don't remember for Resurrection 100% off the top of my head, but I know that Alien, Aliens, and Alien 3, of course, they have alternate versions. So I talked about those, I think, briefly in my previous reviews, but for Alien and Aliens, but the Alien 3, I think, is called the Assembly Cut. So I'll just kind of touch on that briefly. So the Assembly Cut adds up about, I want to say, like 30 minutes of extra footage in the film. So if you're going to watch one version of this movie, I highly recommend watching the Assembly Cut versus the theatrical edition. Now, there's like one or two things in the theatrical edition that I prefer over the Assembly Cut, but for the most part, I think the assembly cut's the way to go, and I will discuss kind of what those are kind of towards the end. Again, like I said, I'm not going to go too deeply on this in this movie. I'm just going to kind of give a brief rundown. So, of course, as far as cast goes, we've got Sigourney Weaver returning as Ripley. Charles Dance, who plays Clemens, he's really great in this movie. And even Lance Henriksen kind of shows up for a small little kind of cameo part in this film, and he's great. I love seeing Lance Henriksen in everything. Among others, this film has a pretty decent sized cast of all men. Like, Sigourney Weaver is the only female in this entire movie, which is not really odd, but it's just something that kind of sort of adds to the tension in this film in certain ways. So this film starts out with the escape pod from the Sulaco from the previous film. It crashes. We get some kind of little bits and pieces of kind of what happened. And it crash lands on a planet, Fury 161, I think is what it's called, which is a prison planet. Which I love this idea of there being an entire planet where they've just sent these really horrible prisoners, people who have done terrible things. I really like that idea. Again, I'm a big sci-fi horror fan, and this is just something that kind of feeds that, that love of kind of space and different planets and things like that. So basically, what happens is that they take Sigourney Weaver, Ripley. They take her off of the out of the kind of escape pod from the Sulaco, and we find out that Newt and Hicks from the previous film have died. They died in a cryo sleep, and Sigourney Weaver is not so sure. I'm sorry, I'm going to keep saying Sigourney Weaver through the entire review. I got to make myself say Ripley. Ripley is not sure that the way that everyone on this planet, like the medical doctor, Clemens is his name, Charles Dance, is not really kind of convinced by his explanation of how they've died. So she orders an autopsy because, of course, she finds a little kind of acid burn, and she knows better. She by this point in her life, she knows a little bit better than to just kind of assume that everything is going to be okay. And of course, they take Newt's body, and there is this kind of sort of visceral kind of autopsy scene. We don't really see anything, but all of it is kind of implied, and it's kind of just like, oh my God, they're doing this on a child. Again, thinking back on Newt from the original film, it's really sad, like all of this. And Hicks, we grow to love Hicks so much in the first movie, and Bishop, of course. I can't forget about Bishop. He's just been completely destroyed. So everything that she really kind of established in the previous film, those relationships that she set up, are completely destroyed because both of them are dead, and Bishop has been destroyed. And so she is brought to this planet, again, full of prisoners. They are murderers, rapists, so on and so forth. Just terrible people all around. But they have kind of reformed, and they formed like almost this sort of religious cult where they're kind of waiting on sort of God to return and take them home, I guess. So that was a really interesting kind of plot point in this movie, and I want to touch briefly on this kind of setup of this prison that they're in. It is such a cool looking environment. Like, I think it's just such a cool place for like an alien film, because basically the sort of brief rundown of what is going on in this prison is it's this old prison planet that they've kind of stopped really giving a shit about, and they've basically left all these people there because they chose to stay, to more or less kind of leave the pilot light on at this place, I think is what one of the characters says. And so they're just kind of there as maintenance, essentially, is what's going on. So, I really like that feeling of isolation that this adds to the movie. Like, nobody's coming, nobody's really going to get in a hurry to get there. And, of course, somebody is supposed to come and get Ripley, but, like I said, nobody is really in a hurry to get to this place. Like, it's more or less just kind of like, deal with it. We'll get to you when we can. Everything's going to be fine, so on and so forth. So, again, in the sets just look fantastic. Like the whole movie just looks great. It has this really dark and gritty and nasty atmosphere. Again, that is perfect for an alien film. I think the setting just fits super well. And then, of course, we find out that during the cryosleep, an egg was planted on the escape pod, and a facehugger did come out and did implant an embryo, implanted 2 embryos, which we'll get to one in just a minute. So this is where there's a big kind of difference versus the from the theatrical edition to the assembly cut. So I guess I'll kind of segue off of that into the what goes on. Again, I'll talk more about the 2 different cuts. Again, more towards the ending, but in the theatrical version, the facehugger attaches itself to a dog, and the chestburster comes out of the dog, and we get this alien that's more like a quadruped. It is more like a dog. It is more dog-like, and of course, it kind of breaks out and starts to sort of wreak havoc around the prison. In the assembly cut, the facehugger attaches itself to an ox. And the same thing kind of happens. Again, it's a quadruped xenomorph that comes out of the ox, and more or less kind of plays out the same. So I thought that was really interesting. If you watch the 2 versions, it completely changes sort of this big key moment in the movie, as well as other things, which we will discuss. And basically, this xenomorph starts to kind of lurk around the prison, kind of picking everybody off one by one. And I think it's really cool because, again, Alien 3 is really kind of what started this. I mean, of course, there was, I think, the Kenner toy line of, back in the 80s after Aliens, where pretty much we had several different types of like xenomorph creatures that were designed or created or whatever have you. But this is the first time we really see it on film. A xenomorph that came from something that is not a human. So it's very different. Like it runs around on all fours. It's just a little bit different looking. But I love the design of it. I think it's so cool. Now, I will say they, instead of doing CGI, which they could have around this time, or doing like a guy in a suit or whatever. Now, there was a couple other suit ideas that they had. I'm not going to really touch on. Definitely look into that if you are able to watch the special features. But they decided to go with, a lot of people say it is CGI. They say it looks like crap. It's really crappy CGI, but it's not. What they did, which I think is actually a really smart decision on the production standpoint, is they did the creature with like as a puppet. Like they did a rod puppet, which I think looks really good. It's not composited the best, and it looks a little janky in some scenes, I'm going to be honest with you. But for the most part, I think it looks okay. Again, like I said, it just was not composited the best. Now, when you get kind of close-ups of the xenomorph, I think it looks fantastic. Like, the iconic scene of Sigourney Weaver when the xenomorph kind of comes up and it gets right in her face, and you think it's going to kill her. That is such an iconic scene from the franchise, and I've seen it on so much promotional material. Of course, that came from this movie, and it looks great. Or the scene when the guy sees it kind of in the hallway after it's killed somebody. I think it looks good. Like, I mean, I think it's, again, it's just an animatronic, but it looks great. I have no issues with it. Now, there is some like small uses of CGI in this movie, which don't look good, for the time. But I mean, they're okay. They're so small that it's something that you probably won't even really like notice, or it really won't take you out of the movie that much. There's one scene in particular which I'll talk about in just a little bit. But kind of going back to that scene, like I said, where the xenomorph kind of comes up and gets right in Ripley's face. Again, everybody's seen that kind of still shot. The reason it does not kill her is because the facehugger that implanted the embryo in the dog/ox, whichever version you watch, also implanted an embryo inside of Ripley, and she is carrying a queen alien embryo. So I thought that was a really interesting concept too, that it's not just a normal kind of face hugger. Like the face hugger looks a little bit different, and I just thought that was a really neat concept. Basically, how it implants the queen, and it implants a drone xenomorph to sort of protect the queen. Because of course it's going to be vulnerable in its face hugger / chest burster phase. So I think that's really interesting, and of course it takes a little bit longer to kind of come out. And so Ripley knows that she's more or less done for. So they contact the company, which is Weyland-Yutani, of course, and they ask them for permission to basically terminate the xenomorph after they capture it. And they go through this whole elaborate thing where they capture the xenomorph in this kind of toxic waste room, and the company denies them, of course, because they want the xenomorph. Like they don't, after all this time, they want to get their hands on this xenomorph. So right then she knows, it's fishy. There's something going on, and they at that point decide that they are going to, destroy this thing one way or the other. Well, again, if you watch I don't remember how it plays out in the theatrical version, but in the assembly cut, one of the prisoners, he's crazy. He's a little thrown off. He sets the xenomorph loose after it's been contained to this room, and it gets out again. So they have to kind of establish this other way to kill it. And basically what happens is they take it to like this refinery that they have, and they lead it sort of down this corridor, or this little kind of lead molding thing that they have, and they trap it down there, and they pour molten hot lead over the xenomorph, and then of course they turn on the sprinklers, which just causes the xenomorph to explode. And it's great. And again, that's where that little touch of really bad use of CGI kind of comes in. You'll know it when you see it, 100%. But they destroy the thing. And then, of course, the only thing left is that Ripley knows that she needs to die, because she has the Queen Xenomorph in there, and she knows that if this thing bursts out of her chest, this whole thing is going to start back over and is going to happen again, and she cannot let that happen. So around this time, the company, Weyland-Yutani shows up. This is where we get the cameo. I don't even really want to say cameo, but we see Lance Henriksen, who played Bishop, of course, in the previous movie, and he is basically playing the man who designed the Bishop android. And so he comes there and tells her, it's going to be a quick surgery. We can take the chest burster out of you, and you'll be fine, and you get to live. And she ponders it for a minute. But then she decides that, no, she does not trust this company. So what she does is she falls, she doesn't fall, she jumps basically into this giant pit of molten steel in this refinery, and she kills herself. So it is kind of a little bit of a bummer ending, but I think it wraps up the trilogy really, really well. I think it is a great way to end this, because of course the past however long Sigourney Weaver has really been dealing with this. In reality, it's probably been like maybe a year in real time, even though between the first film and the second film it was 57 years, I think it was, is what Burke tells her in the previous movie. And of course her hypersleep between Aliens and Alien 3 was a little bit shorter. So, but in reality of her awake time, it's been, maybe like a month. I don't know. Like it's kind of hard whenever you break it down to that, which is really interesting. That'd be something I would actually like to do, is break down like how much time Sigourney Weaver has actually faced the xenomorph like awake, because like most between each movie she was in cryosleep for a really long time. But either way, like I said, the xenomorph has taken away so much from her, and it finally, that's kind of the bummer part of the ending, is that it sort of, the xenomorph kind of wins in a way, in the way that it takes her life, but she wins too, because she destroys the Queen, and she kind of destroys the last trace of the xenomorphs, because of course the refinery, or the colony in the previous film was blown up. So at this point there should be no more. So again, I think that this was a great way to cap off the franchise. If it would have completely ended right here, I would have been perfectly fine, and I think it would have been a great way to wrap this up. So, now that I've kind of gone through the movie, the differences between the theatrical cut and the assembly cut, I'm not going to go too deeply on them, but I just kind of want to touch on them briefly. So the the assembly cut, like I said, adds about 30 minutes, give or take, of extra footage, and that's a lot, in a film. Like that's a lot of time that was kind of cut out, which is unfortunate. So pretty much what the assembly cut adds is, of course, it adds a lot more character development, like between Ripley and Clemens, one of the prisoners named Gallic. It adds a lot of stuff with his character. It adds a lot of, again, character development between, like, Clemens and, like, the warden of the prison. It adds a lot of character development just for the prisoners themselves, because they have this strange kind of religious, I don't even really want to say cult, but it kind of is in a way. Like, that's the way it reads to me. It just adds a lot more development of the characters. And of course, the big thing in there that this movie adds is, whichever version you're watching, is of course how the xenomorph is brought into this situation. So again, like I said, the theatrical cut, it is a dog. The facehugger attaches to a dog and it bursts out of that. Or it, in the assembly cut, it comes from the ox. Now, this is a change that I personally prefer in the theatrical cut. I like that it comes from the dog. And the only reason I say that is just because it moves more like a dog, and like the dog is a little bit more believable for me, like when you see the xenomorph and like how it's actually designed, which again was designed once again by H.R. Giger. So I think that to me is one change that I probably would have kept from the previous version. Now, I like the idea of it coming from the ox just because that's very, very different. I like that, but it just, again, seems more canine to me than it does bovine, I guess you could say, with it coming out of the ox. So that's a change I probably would have kept, or would have left in there, is that it came from the dog. Again, just because it comes off as a little bit more doggish, I guess you could say. But overall, I must say, if you're gonna watch a version of this movie, I highly recommend watching the assembly cut. I think most of the places where you would stream this movie, it's gonna be the theatrical cut. And I don't know why. Really and truly, I don't, because anywhere that you go to watch Aliens, you're gonna find the extended edition, the special edition of Aliens. Like, that is the version of that film to watch. So why on earth, are we only gonna get the theatrical version of Alien 3? I don't get that. I don't understand that. To me personally, that doesn't make a lot of sense. But again, that's just me. That's my personal opinion. So overall, I love this movie. I have no, I've kind of gone over some of my issues with this movie. Just, they're very small, minor complaints. But overall, like I said, I think that this movie was a fantastic addition to the franchise. I think it's great. I love this movie. I enjoy it. Every time I watch it, I enjoy it. I have no problems with it. It's anytime I'm sitting down to do like a marathon of these movies, it's never like, oh, Alien 3, I got to sit through this one. That's more like Resurrection, personally. Now, I do like Resurrection for what it is, but it does have its issues, which we will discuss when we get to that film next. But Alien 3, again, I like it. I really wish, personally, I kind of wish that they would have capped off this original trilogy and just stopped there. That would have been perfectly fine for me, but again, what do I know? I'm just here to watch these movies. They're just kind of, I have no say in the matter. But I think it's great. I don't think it deserves any of the hate that it gets. Again, I don't like this movie just to be contrary to everybody else's opinion. I truly do enjoy this movie, and I think that it deserves a lot more love than it actually gets, especially the assembly cut. I think that's the version to go with. So I hope everyone enjoyed this review. I'm going to try to get to Resurrection pretty soon, if I get the chance. We'll just see kind of how everything goes. I've kind of been putting this off. The original plan was to do Alien, do the Alien franchise, do the first Alien through Romulus, basically do all of those films. Several months ago is whenever I planned to do this, and then I was going to do the Predator franchise during the summer, because those are more just like summertime movies to me personally, but that's just, again, my personal opinion. And then I was going to kind of meet in the middle and do AVP and AVPR, and do those two, for whatever that, I'll save that for whatever I get there. And then of course I wanted to do kind of a ranking of each franchise. I still want to do that, and I still will probably, get to that point. I don't know. Again, it just depends. Like, I'm not trying to get too personal here, but of course I've started a new job, so I've got a lot of stuff kind of going on. So I'm gonna try to get to those as soon as I can. Right now, I've been just trying to at least do kind of one review or one video or whatever have you every week, just to kind of get those out of the way, because I don't want to just leave everybody kind of hanging. The people who do watch my videos, but anyway, that's enough. Like I said, about kind of personal stuff, but again, just kind of look forward to Resurrection. It is coming. The rest of the franchise is coming, so just know that I have not forgotten about that. There's a few other franchises I need to wrap up before I get before a certain time, which we'll see what that is whenever I get there. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed this review. As always, have a great night. Stay tuned for the next episode, and goodbye.